Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video. In this video, we're gonna look at key value observers using Swift in iOS platforms. So let's begin by creating our first project. So let's load up Xcode, and I'm going to create a new project, and I'm going to go with a single view application, and let's call it KVO, key value observer. And I don't want these unit test or unit test or code data. I'll leave it. And a language, I'm going to select Swift and give it a package name or the organization identifier. Click next, and I'm going to create it on my desktop. Cool. So first thing first, I'm going to actually create a label in my storyboard. So let's add a storyboard label. Let's search for the UI label and drag and drop it in the middle, and I'm going to align it horizontally and vertically in the center. We don't have to give any height or width to the label because label usually have their own width and height as well, so we don't have to necessarily give height and width. So that's a tip for you if you don't know that. And I'm going to make a reference. Control drag name label. Cool. So we have the reference to that label here. And actually we are now going to begin with our work. So we're going to create a class called human. Let's call it human. And I'm going to create a class human. And I'm going to inherit from NS object. So this is something we don't do usually with the Swift. We don't necessarily have to inherit from NS object, but in this case we have to do it. Otherwise we won't be able to set the observable. And my human has a property called human name. And let's give it a default name. So let's KJ. In addition to that, we also have to make it as object to see and dynamic property. Cool. Now our class is ready. The next thing we have to do is we gonna have to create a observer class. So this actually we can do it in a separate file, but for the readable purpose I'm going to do it in the same class so you can at the time see both. Meanwhile, let's increase the size as well, size of the font, and the next class is going to be human observer. You can name whatever you want, and it is going to inherit from NS object class. And first thing with the object to see key, we're gonna say human, a reference to the object using this human class that we declared above. And we're gonna have a couple of more properties. NS key value observation, and then we're gonna create our initializer. So we're gonna say in the initializer we're gonna get a human object. Let's say object. It's a human object. Let's take off the override, we don't need that. And human is equal to, or we can say self.human equal to human. Actually, it should be human, and this should be object. All right. And don't forget to call the super init. And the next thing is we gonna set the observation or the observer to this human name property. Let's see how we can do that. Now it's time to set the observation. So where we can observe the changes that is happening to the human name property. So let's say observation that we declared above, and we're gonna say observe. All right, make sure it has options and change handler. First is the key path. We can say dot human dot the property human name. So we can pass in the key path like that. The next thing is we need to pass in the options where we need the old value as well as the new value. And for this change handler, we're gonna get two values. One is the actual object and the change. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna get the changed value, and this is the observation, and this observation object is going to listen to the changes that is going to happen to this variable, and whenever there is a change, this method is going to fire. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna say print and change dot new value. You can pass in a default value since this is optional variable. All right, let's run our project and see before making any changes. Right. Okay, I don't see any issues here, so no problem. So what I'm going to do is inside view controller, I'm going to make some changes. So I'm going to create a human object first. Say let human and we're also going to create a observer object, and we're going to create a human observer, and we're going to pass in our human object. All right. And the next thing is I'm going to change the name of human and see whether the change is reflected. New name. So ideally when we are changing this property inside this observation closure, this print statement should get fired. So let's run it and see whether it's getting fired. As you can see, this print statement is called and the new value, new name is being printed. So that means now whenever we change this human name property, this closure is going to get fired and this print statement will be printed. So that's cool, but now we gonna have to do something more practical. So I want to pass this value from this human observer class into our view controller. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a delegate in this scenario, but there are other methods. You can use closures, you can use an NS notification center, but for the sake of this example, I'm going to use protocols. So let's call it protocol, and let's call it human value, human object delegate. Yeah, let's call it that way. And we're going to define a function human name did change, and it's going to pass in a human name which is a type of string. All right, and we're gonna have a reference to that delegate here, which is a type of human object delegate. And inside here we're gonna check if delegate then delegate dot it, we can say change dot new value, or we can pass in a default value. All right, so let's say it there should be a let. Right. Okay, this way we can avoid the confusion. So the compiler won't be confusing this delegate and this delegate. So this new delegate is no longer yeah, we need to add self. This delegate is no longer a optional, but this one is optional. So we have unwrapped it successfully, and we are sending the data. So the next thing, if you know about protocols, next thing we have to do is we need to confirm it in our view controller. You can confirm it here, or you can write a new extension. I like to use extensions because that way we can keep our code more clean. All right, it says we need to implement a function. All right, it's implemented. Inside here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the name label text. Oops. Actually, we made a mistake initially. We have created a reference for the NS layout constraint. Actually, we don't want to create a reference for the NS layout constraint. Let's see, I'm going to remove that. Cool. And let's go to here. Let's copy this. I'm going to get rid of it. Make sure to remove the reference in the storyboard and then remove it from your code. Otherwise, your app will crash. Now I'm going to drag it from here. That way I can make sure. And let's give the name label. See, these are the issues typically happen in a typical development environment. So you will get used to these things as you progress in your career. So next thing is I'm going to set the text of this human name. Let's run it and see. It's not going to work. Let me tell you why. The new name is fired here, but the value is not passed through the delegate. That's because we have not set the source of this delegate. So I'm going to say is observer.delegate is equal to self, so that the delegate knows that the data should be passed to this class, because we are passing the reference to this current class view controller. So let's run it again. This time the label should change. Boom, new name. As you can see, the new name is passed here. So in order to make it a bit more fun, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a array. Let's call it other names, which is a string array, and I'm going to fill it with some names. Let's say some of the names people used to call me. The people still call me with these names. Style type, or the lies of myself. And the next thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a timer, and we're going to give it a time with time interval of 2 seconds, and it's going to repeat yes, and we gonna do some work here. So I'm going to set the lower bound and highest bound of the array. you will see in a moment what I'm doing that. Lower bound is 0. Higher bound is going to be other names dot count minus 1, because the array indexes are always 1 less than what we would count. So the next thing is I'm going to set the value for the name label dot text is equal to other names. Inside the array, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say int rot random. So um, it's going to call a random numbers within the range that we are giving. So the range is going to be lower bound to, that is lower bound to higher bound. So this way we can avoid array out of index bound kind of problems. We have to put it self here because we access it inside a closure. So let's run it and see if these names are dynamically updated randomly in the label. So new name, J, Mayu, Mayuresan, J. As you can see, this timer is being called over and over again for every 2 seconds, and these strings are randomly assigned to this uh, text here. So this is not shouldn't be the right way of doing it. So what I'm going to do is human dot human name, and I'm going to do the same, because we are not going to manipulate the label here. We are going to manipulate the variable here, and the observer is going to observe it and going to pass the data through the delegate here, and it will be updated in the UI. So let's see whether it works now. Boom, as you can see, it works perfectly fine. So let me explain one last time how it works in overall. First, we have this class where we have a property called human name, and we are adding an observer to this property name human name here. So whenever this human name property changes, this closure is called, and inside this closure we are using the delegate and passing that name to the view controller. Inside the view controller, what we are doing is we are randomly assigning some strings to this human name, and because of that, whenever this human name property changes, that observer is firing and the delegate is called, and our label in the UI is updated. So if you are using a MVVM pattern, this is a way how you can bind your UI and your view and view model. And also this is the basics of RXSwift. So in the future I will do one of other tutorials in RXSwift, series of tutorials in RXSwift, either on YouTube or in Udemy. So that is it all, I think. I hope now you have an understanding about key value observing. So that is it all, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for watching this tutorial. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, I have launched a new course on building applications without using storyboard in Skillshare. Please find the link in the description, and if you can, please enroll and enjoy that free course for 2 months. Skillshare will provide 2 months of free subscription for new users, so check it out. That's it. It's all. Bye for now. Take care.